Have you been a fan of The Umbrella Academy since it started? Well, we are now here at the final season, season 4, which only gets 6 episodes, but I'm here to talk about my kind of ranking of all 4 seasons. I'm talking non-spoilers of season 4, all 6 episodes, and I'm talking about, at the end, my top 3 favorite characters throughout all 4 seasons. But first comes the review. Non-spoilers as always. Thanks for joining me. Let's jump in. The Hargraves siblings have scattered after the climactic showdown at the Hotel Oblivion led to a complete reset of their timeline. Stripped of their powers, each is left to fend for themselves and find a new normal. So once again, the story of the 6 episodes is them still having to save the world, but it's always come down to them having to be the cause of saving the world because they set things in motion that needed the world to be saved. If you've been following along for the last 3 seasons, you'll know how climactic the end of the 3rd season was, but that each season kind of was like that. And so now, once again, the dysfunctional family are even more dysfunctional because they no longer have their power, so have no reason to stay together. At least that's what occurs in the first episode. They are scattered, and we follow each of their lives with, let's say that they've each come into their own in varying degrees, but they're all struggling somewhat and haven't really kept up being a part of each other as a family until you get the instigating moment, the instigating MacGuffin that kind of brings them all back together, and obviously at some point their powers are going to be manifest again. What I liked about this season was that it's short contained. It didn't feel like there were any massive tangents that went along the wayside as MacGuffin fillers. Now there is still a couple of storylines that don't really need to be in the season, even within these 6 episodes, but for the most part you don't mind too much because the focus is on the major arc of the story. And I'm happy to say that one of the main kind of tangents this goes on is Ben is a proper character this time round. We haven't had a lot of Ben in the previous seasons, just kind of mentioned as in season 1, like they have this monologue, a bit of dialogue that they kind of rattle off as to why he died and you know how great he was. This time round, even though he's not there, Ben is a big part of the storyline. Now, we've seen each of the characters go on amazing journeys in their selves, in their journeys with their powers. And if you look at who they were from the beginning, you'll see that massive arc in story and progression. The standout to watch this season is for 2 actors, Nick Offerman and Megan Mullally. They play Dr. Jean, and their characters are so fun to watch. They are crazy, kind of psychotic in the best way, straight-laced, intelligent, weird and wacky, and these 2 actors play their roles perfectly. I loved every scene they were in. Literally stole the show. Whenever they're on screen, they were stealing the show. Apart from Robert Sheehan, who plays Klaus Hargraves. He's always been a really interesting, weird character that has had to come to terms with that he's basically an alcoholic, a drug addict, and also now is immortal because his powers are kind of probably the weirdest. Now these 3, as I was mentioning at the beginning, are the top 3 standouts. Even though we've had great moments from other actors and mentions, I think Elliot Page has been great, Tom Harper has been great, David Castadina, his character as Diego has like progressed throughout the seasons has been great, but Robert Sheehan as Klaus for me in every season has been the standout. He's been the most fun to watch, the most broken character, and the most in need of help because he's always the one that's probably going to lead them right down the wrong path. And we do have a tangent of his storyline in this season that isn't necessarily needed but was very fun to watch and is a kind of bringing a couple of the family members together, which in turn brings the rest of the family members together, so when they need to do stuff to save the world, save the cheerleader, save the world, that does happen. So even though it's a tangent, it is sort of needed. You'll see it when you watch it, but his performances as always are fantastic, very fun to watch. Because the writers obviously knew that this was the final season and they could put everything on screen within every episode. The first episode is a bit hard to get through. It's the slowest because it's the one that's kind of telling what has happened, the recap of their lives within the 6 years. And I have to say, I struggled with that first episode. I thought, really? Is this where they're going? Is this what they're going to do for the last season? Thankfully, it's not. Once we get into episode 2, they let everything out, from fantastic gunfights with powers to creature creations that happen throughout. There are moments in this where I looked at the CGI and thought, wow, that's prosthetics and CG, but it looks fantastically real, even though I know what I'm looking at isn't real. And so they really put their budget all in these 6 episodes. The special effects and the story-wise that combined with the action is a lot of fun. The pacing wasn't bad for me at all. I think when it slows down, it's much needed emotional entanglement that these kids have had to go through so much, and they're not kids anymore, but Hargrave obviously sees them as his. And they have a few outbursts of monologues that they've needed to get off their chest that feels like has been building for all 4 seasons. I really like the way they kind of bring the reality of what their life has been, but they've come so far they're able to recognize their mistakes, their issues, but then they make all new ones in this season. So we have so many kind of tangents that this story goes on that's all within the arc that works well to bring us to the fruition of what's happening at the end, that we have a sort of cult thing that's going on, and the story is written tightly for us to really enjoy those moments, even though the tangents don't always work, but they work within the arc of the story. I think I'm making sense here. I'm trying to. So the special effects were great. The action is gory and bloody like you'd expect there to be. All of the powers that you've been wanting to see our characters use, they get to use them at some point in this, and they no longer have to sort of like train for those powers. They just are in control of them, even though their powers are slightly different this time. So I would say that this, for me, in all 4 seasons of the ranking, would be number 2. I would say the first season, that the freshness that the series brought, the uniqueness of the story, dysfunction of broken family that are thrust into being heroes from a father that was basically an overseer rather than a father, a mother that was a robot, and a butler that was more of a father to them, that was their father was, who was a chimp. That in original story I think was the best. And then season 4 throws everything at the screen and doesn't have to work for it too much because it's already had everything happen before. That's the reason why this works so well. The ending for season 4 is brave. It's not gonna be everybody's cup of tea, but I think they stick to their guns, and I like the way they ended. Do watch to the end of the credits. There is a slight clip that might undo everything, so go make sure you watch that. So season 1 in my ranking first, season 4 number 2, and then I would say season 3 for number 3, and 4 is 2. I think 2, they went all over the weight side a bit, and it was a bit topsy-turvy, and I felt like there was a lot of padding, and it just felt like there could have been a much shorter season pacing wise. I've enjoyed all 4 seasons, so I'm not saying any of them are bad. I'm just saying that that would be my ranking, and my top 3 characters are the ones I mentioned. I think Robert Sheehan and as Klaus Hargraves has been the most interesting and fun to watch, but of course then we have Nick Offerman and Megan Mullally as Dr. Jean Thibodeau, who just bring such a freshness to this series in the way they portray their character that fit so well. Obviously, we've seen Nick Offerman recently in The Last of Us TV series. I think 1 or 2 episodes, but particularly episode 4, he was phenomenal in. I now really do look forward to whenever I see his name in a film or a TV series. I'm like, yeah, this is going to be good because he's fantastic. He's really great. So let me know your top 3 characters of this series. If you had to choose, how would you rank them as well as the series? I'm going to give this 4 Nicolas Cages out of 5.
You got one.
I think it's a solid entry, a solid ending. Don't forget to watch that end credit sequence. It's a really small one, but you'll understand that it throws up some questions. Thanks so much for watching, but most of all, until next time, remember, live long Tuesday.